Welcome and thanks for taking the ride on Transcendental Waves. I'm Jeff Bailey.
And I'm Michael Burrows. Today we're going to talk about psychedelic renaissance. And I want to start with a few disclaimers. One, me and Jeff do not encourage or suggest that anyone uses psychedelics. We are not advocating for any use of these substances. This discussion is about information and research and topics that we have learned over time reading medical things and all the information that's out there that we're just trying to get you guys to go look up too. Right, Jeff? What do you want to add to that?
I guess what I'd say is we wouldn't advocate that anyone do anything illegal. Depending on where you are in the world, some of these things could get you in a lot of trouble. So we wouldn't advocate anyone doing anything that could cause them any harm or get them in any trouble.
Right. There's certain states and countries that you can go and do these things. There's churches you can go to within the states, all of them, that you can go and experience these things. So there's definitely legal ways to do this, and we suggest if you're going to do anything, always do it legally. Of course, we don't break the law.
Do your research. Know where your research is coming from. Stay within your legal rights.
All right, guys. Now, exciting things about psychedelics. When I grew up, it was always psychedelics are drugs. Drugs are bad for you. They didn't say anything about the rewiring the brain and growing the brain and expanding consciousness and all that. It was all like, if you do drugs, your consciousness is going down. Jeff, is that what drugs was like for you back then too?
Yeah, this is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. The cracked egg frying in the skillet type thing. The war on drugs really, kind of demonized a lot of different things that we are finding out now through Johns Hopkins and different places that are actually willing to look into these things. That these things can really help with different medical things like depression, anxiety. There's a lot of different ways we can use this that we can actually prove there's a benefit.
Right. So not only have you guys been told that drugs will hurt your brain, that's been proven not to be even true with psychedelics. In fact, the total opposite has been proven to be true. And universities, Johns Hopkins, MAPS. There's even federal research now that shows this. Guys, go research it. It's all over the internet now. It's all over in the news and everything.
Just Google neuroplasticity, and then you can Google different psychedelic compounds and their effects with neuroplasticity. And, the results are just right there. That they show that,
they're not addictive. They've never killed anybody. They're like the most harmless thing ever, but yet the growth from them has been shown to blow anything else out of the water anyone has ever experienced, whether through religion or education. And it's just from the earth. I don't know why you guys would not want to try that.
Functional mushrooms, which are, there's a lot of non-psychedelic mushrooms that are being shown to do a lot of these very similar things. People are switching from the coffee to have the myceliated grains or whatever. There's a bunch of these different mushroom blends that are coming out. So this research is starting to filter its way into just normal things. But to be honest, I think that this new psychedelic renaissance is going to be the new version of turn on, tune in, drop out. Except more of a infiltration of the system instead of everybody we've got to find a new way to almost popularize it and not make it such a
Stigma?
a demonized thing. Yeah.
Psychedelics in the movies these days. I swear the past few movies I have watched have been about psychedelics and encouraging these. And it's it's just people just we're being kind of indoctrinated now, thank goodness, with smart people. almost like flurrying little bits of magic to the masses. Like, hey, wake up, people, wake up.
See, to me, like, I look back on some of the things I liked as kids, and like, I mean, some of the movies that were my favorite. And when I first found psychedelics, I was just like, oh, that was like you said, I was programmed to do it. And then part of me realized that like psychedelics and like just kind of show you the patterns of thought and like why you think the way you do or whatever. So like to me, it's like now everything I see, I like see it as propaganda or subconscious programming, whether it's like good or bad. Like
Yes,
everything we watch, you
right.
realize it's like, oh dang, these are people putting out a message. Like it's hard to see things without seeing the subliminal messages nowadays because of psychedelics. And I don't know that like, I mean, I don't know that they're like. I think there's always been good people out there trying to be like, here's a little like eye-opening thing, like Wizard of Oz, like the Alice in Wonderland, the Willy Wonka, Charlie Chocolate. You know,
Dude, the eye-opening thing. Here's what I just remembered what I was thinking about. Some of the smartest people in the world have made the most advancements of technology, have done it under the influence of psychedelics. Like the discoverer of DNA was on LSD. Steve Jobs, said the most important thing he'd ever done was LSD. These people who are dying of cancer and say that in the John Hopkins studies that their most mystical or spiritual portion of their whole lives was during their time with mushrooms. It's like those are things that I think every human would want to experience and should. Like, just think, Jeff, if we grew up in high school and like we knew that all these like smart tech aristocrats were out using psychedelics and just coming up with all of the technology to expand, everything. And here we are in bumfuck Tennessee thinking drugs are frying our brain.
yeah. I mean, dude, I think that just goes to show you that like, I mean, the whole like perception of like what they are and what they can do has been manipulated by an outside source. Because I mean, when you look at like everybody's like personal like opinion of what they see when they're tripping or whatever. I mean, of course there's like good and bad trips stories out there, but the broad overlying theme is like a connectedness, a oneness, and like especially with like the more like organized therapy and stuff we're doing with these things, like the results are just like 80 to 90% of the patients in these like studies show like positive effects.
Dude, the science, guys, is out there. Just go and research psychedelic use for overcoming depressions and addictions and traumas.
Like the PTSD
Whew.
for veterans and stuff like that. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of things out there where it's just like, is the reason we're being told this stuff is bad to protect us or not? And that's like the where you question it. And it's just like you're seeing now with like maps and a lot of these other like Johns Hopkins and these universities getting in on it. They're that a lot of these big pharma companies are starting to try to like get trademarks on like psilocybin and stuff that like grows naturally. And I think that's the biggest struggle to get like for this to be like an okayed thing. And it's still like
Someone has to get
it has
rich.
to filter through capitalism some way somehow in order
Yes.
for it to be legalized. And instead of it just being like, yeah, this is a thing that doesn't
It grows on
necessarily
the
hurt
earth.
people,
Right.
and it should just be a thing that you should be able to do and grow in your backyard if you wanted to.
Right. Yeah. These ain't things you got to go to a drugstore or like you don't have to have a drug man to get to. Like it shouldn't even be that way, right? Like you should be able to have a fucking garden in your backyard and grow whatever plants you want.
Yep. And if the plants that you happen to grow alter your consciousness, it shouldn't be
Because you ain't
shouldn't be
nobody
an
doing
issue.
bad things with these substances. Like we were talking the other day. Like drugs have a crazy definition, almost like the word fuck. It can just mean so many things. Like people's like drugs, and drugs is bad, and then some people's like drugs is good, and then some people's like, oh, I'm ordered to take drugs by my doctor, and then I got a card in this state that lets me take drugs. I mean, like, but not in this state, and it's like What makes a drug legal versus illegal, and like what's over the counter drug versus a prescription drug? I mean, drugs, man.
I guess that's the thing too that I would argue is like we would argue over drugs and medicine, and we personally believe one thing, and other people personally believe another. But like, I would just tell people to look at like the list of side effects that are found in a lot of the medicines that we approve for people to take, and the list of side effects that are listed in the ones that are illegal. And I mean, I'm not going to argue with a a a lot of drugs that are illegal. Like I'm not somebody that says fentanyl should just be something everybody should take, and like that. There's a lot of things out there that I would say like I understand the reasoning behind them being illegal. They can be very scary if we're just letting people willy nilly have these things that like could just kill you. But there's
Dude, I was
the
like,
cases of people like overdosing or having severe psychosis on like marijuana or psychedelics are so low, like that it almost seems like it doesn't happen, and the reported cases of psychosis could just be like somebody looking for reasons to make it
a
illegal.
propaganda tool.
Yeah, and I mean I can't prove that, but it feels that way to me. Like, I mean, there's just so many studies where it's just like, you know, 87% of participants found like relief from depression, and then it would be like there's two that like had a bad trip, and I think the bad trip is just like another misunderstanding of the thing where it's just like some people have some severe trauma to process, and everybody handles
Yeah.
these things a little differently.
Right, and every time you do these like psychedelic things, it's like going into a therapy session, and not just a therapy session. It's like 1,000 or 10,000, therapy sessions. It's like going into the deepest parts of your mind and your heart. It's sometimes it's not for the average person or for the person who hasn't balanced those issues, in their mind or heart too. It's like Mother Nature is, the plants are always going to give you what you need. And sometimes what you need, what God thinks you need or, Mother Earth thinks you need is not the same thing that you think you need.
Right, that's what I would say. I was like, it's not necessarily like a bad trip. It's like you're learning to process a very heavy emotion, and sometimes, like, it's not even that. Like, I don't think that you shouldn't do these things. It's also just like going into it and just expecting it to be sunshine and rainbows every time. Sometimes the things that you need to see about yourself are not sunshine and rainbows, and if you can't process it, then I mean, that's a lesson in itself.
There's so many lessons to learn about yourself and about history and people and humanity and the soul and the mind, when you can go in these things. And no wonder, people in authority are going to try to scare you away from it. The church, they're going to tell you it's the devil. They're terrible for you. I mean, thank goodness these people can't just keep telling us this, and the information that they're trying to is just doesn't hold up.
The last like psychedelic revolution was kind of started by Timothy Leary, and it's one of those things where at one point the government, I can't remember who the president was at the time, that said he was the most dangerous man in America, and to me it's just because they're afraid that like people are going to drastically change the system, and I do think that like part of it like the new revolution and the reason why like it's so looked down upon is because it will drastically change the system. And what that means, I
I kind
don't.
of think the system's already drastically changed since the last time it tried to drastically change. It's just like where we live, the capital, like weed. And in some states, weed and psychedelics are legal. We are just so far behind the science and stuff. That's like one of the things I feel like, a warrior for freedom out here, just like exposing, truths and things and, just weaknesses in that system of control, I
That's the
guess.
thing. I guess I don't even feel like we're behind the science. I feel like if you look in the '60s when like the first revolution happened, the government, the CIA, was using the same exact chemicals for different projects, and they were trying to study these things and figure out how to how to better control people or better use people and manipulate people on these things. And this is like, that's the thing, is like, they even realize that it is something that vastly changes your consciousness and can help free your mind when they were trying to learn how to control people. And I do think that, like, in, you know, the Mansons, and like there were some proof to, like, with constant manipulation and, you know, these psychedelics, if you're constantly trying to mold somebody's brain to make them an evil person, you could do that.
Oh, sure, you can mold. Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
it kind of like what we were talking about earlier, it opens up the brain.
People are just so scared. You know, that's what I'm tired of, man. So many people are scared in this country, and I swear, in the Bible Belt, people are more scared than any place. Man, y'all are the scariest people.
It does, when you look around and you can see that, like, the world is being controlled by fear. It is a weird thing when you're just like, I understand that you think you're doing this out of love, but you're so scared to let other people do their thing.
Right.
Like you're so scared that your way might be wrong that you don't want anybody in your family to see somebody else doing it differently.
Right. I see. That's right. That's all that's going around here. And like, y'all, it's not going to be this way forever. I mean, things are changing. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord, baby Jesus.
Amen Ra.
All right, guys, it's been fun talking to you about some psychedelics and stuff. We're trying to keep these a little shorter.
Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. The more you interact, the more other people see us. We'd love to keep doing this. Peace out, guys.
All right,
Enjoy the revolution.
Hit us up with some questions. We love that stuff.